Welcome to Behavioral Health Today, a podcast brought to you by the Triad Network. This podcast is designed to share trending topics occurring within the world and our communities and bring them a behavioral and mental health perspective.
Welcome to Behavioral Health Today. I'm your host, Sharlee Dixon, and today I'm joined by returning guest, Topaz Adizes. Topaz is an Emmy Award-winning writer, director, and experienced design architect. He is an Edmund Hillary Fellow and Sundance Skoll Stories of Change Fellow. His works have been selected to Cannes, Sundance, IDFA, and South by Southwest, featured in New Yorker Magazine, Vanity Fair, and the New York Times, and have garnered an Emmy for new approaches to documentary and 2 World Press Photo Awards for immersive storytelling and interactive documentary. He is currently the founder and executive director of the experience design studio, The Skin Deep. We're excited to have Topaz back with us today, where we'll explore how curiosity and meaningful questions can help deepen human connection, break down biases, foster vulnerability, and create safe spaces for open dialogue. Topaz, welcome back to the show. It's so good to see you again.
Oh, it's good to be here. Thanks for having me again.
Absolutely. So as we get started, listeners, if you haven't checked out our first episode, please make sure you go check that out. It was a really great episode about the power of conversation. But for today, Topaz, can you give us a quick understanding of what the Skin Deep is and share what inspired your passion around deep conversations and meaningful questions?
Skin Deep is an experience design studio where we really explore human connection in this for the last 12 years. Technology is changing the way we interact with one another. It's changing the way we see each other, how we see ourselves. I'm really interested in that. My team are really interested in that. And we've been creating experiences for the last 11, 12 years to explore that. What really brought me to find interest in that was just, as a film director for many years, and I saw how I was dating differently than my brother, who was 15, 16 years younger than I. We were both living in New York at the time. And I just saw how, wow, radically different he was relating to other people, that he was, possible partners that he was dating than I was. And it was only 16 years apart, but it was far more than a generational shift. It was the way he related to technology was fundamentally different than how I did, because when I was born, I was just coming out and realizing the facts and remembering the fact coming out, or VHS. Mm-hmm. And for him, it was already Facebook. And that's just a different world. And so that also relates to how we relate to one another. That technology is a tool in our hands, and it affects the way we see the world and how we see each other. And I was just really interested in that. That's why I launched the Skin Deep as a experience design studio.
Absolutely. And then also you had the and questions that kind of occur in the Skin Deep. So talk about how that passion translated over into something that people can do at home or use at home to strengthen relationships.
So the and is one of our flagship experiences, one of our flagship products and experiences that won the Emmy. That's probably, done the best. And every week we're releasing content and conversations on all our social networks, YouTube and Instagram, TikTok and such. And that's also what the book 12 Questions for Love is. It's a distillation of that, because basically, okay, you're listening to somebody who has had the privilege to watch over 1,250 pairs have conversations for the last 11 years. And that's an incredible data set to be a witness to see, wow, how do you create these conversations that really move people, that really draw them closer, that make them feel more fulfillment in their connection, that make their connection feel that much more resilient because they can weather the storm of any kind of conflict or any type of consternation or type of challenge. And if you think about it, who really gets to see those conversations? Maybe a therapist. But then again, a therapist is trained to kind of guide and be a referee. Mm-hmm. In my experience, I hold the space, I create the questions, and then I sit back, my team and I, and we watch for an hour and a half, people having conversations. And I've learned a lot from that. And that's what the and is. The and is about the space between. In that format, which is our, we've had other experiences that have done well, but that is really a flagship. It's just been a runaway hit. And it's taught me a lot about humans being humans.
Absolutely. Diving deeper into questions, what makes a question powerful, and how do those great questions shape relationships?
Well, the question shapes your perception of reality, frankly, because the question begs the answer. And so the question is the answer, because what you ask is what you'll bring back. If you ask yourself, why did they dump me? Why did we break up? You'll get a bunch of answers. Your mind will go find those answers, whatever it is. Why did I get fired? Why do I hate this job? What's the shitty things I have to do today? Whatever you ask, your brain will go fetch, like a faithful dog, those answers. And oftentimes we're not paying attention to the question. We're just so focused on the answers that we don't realize we're not asking ourselves quality questions. Yeah. So when you start to ask quality questions, you get more quality answers. And quality answers are ones that are constructive, that give you agency, that give you empowerment. What can I do to enjoy my job better? What can I do to feel more fulfilled in my job? What have I learned from this last relationship that I'll carry to the next? How has this last relationship changed me and improved me in a way that I'm excited to share with the next partner? You can shape the answer by the question. And we don't focus enough attention on that. And that's one thing that I've learned from this last year since we last talked. We spoke over a year ago. And at that point, I think you were like the fifth podcast interview I've done. I've since done 100 more. And what I've learned, which is really interesting, because when you write a book, you learn about, I distilled down what did I learn from holding the space for over 1,250 pairs. Okay, put that in a book. And then I never see people read the book. So the only kind of interaction I've gotten is from these interviews. And what I've learned is that what sticks, that kind of my value offering, that is obvious to me only because I've had this experience of witnessing so many conversations, is that it's all about the question. And that's why I say the question is the answer. And if you just very simply, if you ask two kids, I have two kids, a 5 and a 2-year-old, and I go, hey, do you want to go to sleep?
No.
Exactly. No or yes. Those are the options. Now, if I want them to go to sleep, I might ask a better question, which is, do you want to sleep on the couch or on the bed? Do you see how not sleeping is not a possible answer?
Yeah.
So what are you asking of yourself? What are you asking of your relationships? What are you asking of your life? What are you asking of your team at work? You shape the possible answers by the question. And by shaping the answers, you're kind of shaping reality. The sense that, am I going to be depressed with the answers I get? If I get a bunch of bad answers, I will be depressed. I will be sad. I will be disempowered. Hold on a second. Let me get better answers. How do I get better answers? You ask better questions. And there's a way to do that. And we can go into that. But that's the fundamental thing I've learned. If there's anything to take away here is focus on the question. Create a great question. It'll give you great answers.
It honestly, just in listening to you talk, it sounds like it takes a certain level of curiosity even to get to the better question. Is that where that lies?
No, I think curiosity is part of creating the space, and we can talk about that. I think it requires a conscientiousness, being aware. And no one is taught how to create better questions. We go to school to maybe learn how to apply critical thinking. But critical thinking is the application of thought to someone else's question, not your own. Yeah. And oftentimes, whoever's asking the question has the power. You're at work and the boss goes, okay, why did this campaign fail? What should we do? What they're doing is saying, this is where we're focusing our attention. These are the answers we're seeking. So there's a lot of power in the creation of the question. But the way where curiosity falls in is in the space you create to hold those questions, to explore those questions. The space of inquiry, the space you hold the inquiry is very important too. And that's where curiosity comes in. And what I mean by that is, Sharlee, if we work together and I come to you and say, I want to have a conversation where you apologize to me. I want to have a conversation where you agree that my strategy is the right strategy. What I'm doing is telling you where I want to end up. Yeah. You hear that and you go, okay. So you're not engaging me openly with your heart. You're engaging me with the mind. Like, what does this guy want? How does this politics? How's it going to affect my work, my position at work, or our relationship? you're not really thinking about openly engaging. If I come to you with an intention of where I'm at, which is, hey, I want to have a conversation about this because I don't know the answer and I want to discover it together. Okay. You're not necessarily coming with your brain because I'm trying to lead you to a certain end. I'm not trying to manipulate to get to a certain place. I'm honestly coming to you and say, let's like discover this together. And to be in that place, hey, I don't know the answer. Guess what that is? That's curiosity because you don't know the answer. So curiosity is super important, but it comes about creating the space. And that's also and it's also when you ask a well-constructed question, it reinforces the space you're in of asking the questions. What I mean by that is the space you want to be in is safe, but uncomfortable. Uncomfortable means you're discovering new things. You don't know the answer. You're finding new things. That's great, but you're safe because there's trust, there's respect. You think there's at least a few values that we both hold, right? There's a clear boundaries. Okay, I'm safe here. But now let's be uncomfortable because we're asking questions that we're curious about that we don't know the answer to. And then you can have certain questions that with curiosity, those questions are offered as gifts, not as agendas, as manipulations, as politics. They're offered as gifts like, hey, I know we work together. We have the same thing. For some reason, we have a challenge like with this miscommunication. And I'm really wondering where's that coming from? I'm wondering where that's coming from so we could solve it together. Or you're my brother. We've been raised together. And yet you have totally different political points of view than I do, which makes it so bad that we can't talk at Thanksgiving. But hold on a sec. Instead of trying to convince them to see politics in another way, wait, let me tap into this. What am I curious about really? The anger or pain that I have about this person has a totally different political point of view than I do. What is that about? We were raised in the same house, with the same values. What did they experience that led them down that path? I don't know. But let me find out. If I ask the question from that curiosity, the other person feels it. And it's like a peace offering. It's like reinforces a space of safety, albeit uncomfort, to come and explore together. That's where curiosity comes in. It's an important factor, but it's something that you can include in your questions that reinforces the space to hold that inquiry, to really discover one another.
Got you. And so, of course, on the other side of any conversation, or to make it a conversation, there has to be some level of listening, right? So listening skills have to be utilized. So can you walk us through the process of how someone can actively listen to enhance a conversation? So you can ask an amazing question, but if you aren't able to listen and kind of give that back, how can it work?
Don't actively listen. Don't. No, I'll tell you, because that's everyone's active listening is their minds are engaging with the other. I want you to listen deeply. And what that means is don't think. Don't listen with your mind. Now, wait, let me be clear. I'm talking about certain conversations that are exploring your relationship, that there's curiosity in, that you're courageously being vulnerable because you want to learn something about the other that you don't normally talk about, that you don't normally articulate, right? I'm talking about conversations, not when you're trying to like do something, but when you're trying to experience the other person. You're trying to see yourself from their eyes. You're trying to illuminate to them what it's like for you to experience being in a relationship with them. In that space, when we actively listen, what we're often doing is we're listening with our mind, which is, all right, this person's saying this. So what am I going to say in response so that I sound smart? What am I going to listen in response so that they go in the conversation where I want them to go, or that they see my point of view, right? Or that I'm going to win in this argument, or that I won't lose, whatever. What that leads to is two minds talking, and the minds are built to protect you. They're not built to connect you. What's built to connect you are your hearts. So when you drop the mind and you listen with the body, what I call deep listening, you're listening to your body because your body is connected to another type of conversation. They say like the heart and the mind. The heart's like the emotion. Like I would say, okay, you can focus on the heart. Like when you're listening to somebody, sit in the space of listening to feeling your body. When I say listen to your heart, feel your body. Where am I tense right now? My shoulders are tense. Okay, what am I trying to prove in this conversation? Why is that? Hold on a second. Let your intuition talk. Let your body talk, not the mind. The mind is talking all the time. And it takes us on these continuous scripts that make us feel safe and comfortable, but there's no growth in discomfort. There's no growth in comfort. You're doing the same thing over and over again. So you're going to have the same conversations over and over again. That's why, how many times do you find yourself in a relationship with somebody where basically you say the same thing over and over again? That's why you're at dinner. You'd rather look at the phone for something different because you already know, you think you know what they're going to say.
Yeah.
Instead, ask a different question and listen in a different way. Don't listen with the brain, with the mind. Listen with the body. No, when you say that, my shoulder gets really tense. I wonder why that is. Hold on. Oh, yeah. You know what comes up? I get tense because it reminds me of the way my dad used to talk to me. Isn't that interesting? And then maybe they go, you know, it's funny. I see that you do that. I see you also do that when your dad talks to you. I'm sorry, but I don't mean to talk to you the way you see your dad. Maybe I can talk to you in a different way. You see how that just opens a different kind of conversation.
I do.
And God knows we have the same kind of conversations all the time because we don't ask well-constructed questions and we don't deeply listen. We don't listen with our bodies. We don't listen with our hearts. For me, I say the heart and the body the same because basically the body stores the emotional memories and feelings that you have. So let the bodies talk. Let that kind of, and you'll have a different kind of conversation. And this is take-home value. If you're listening right now and you're like, this guy riffs for a long time and he talks, here's something that I want to take home immediately. Vulnerability. We hear it all the time. When someone shares something about themselves and they're being vulnerable, we often tell them, thank you for sharing. Thank you for being vulnerable. Yeah. But what we also need to do is acknowledge that the person listening, that can also be a vulnerable act. And we should acknowledge them too. So if you and I are in a relationship and I ask you, you know, what is the hardest thing about it being in a relationship with me? And what do you think that is? And you start sharing, well, Topaz, you don't really listen to me and you raise your voice, or, you know, sometimes you seem judgmental. I'm going to sit there, I'm listening. That's also vulnerable for me because you're reflecting a relationship. So much like I should acknowledge you after saying, hey, you know, Charlie, thank you for trusting me and opening up and being that honest with me. You can also say, Topaz, thanks for sitting in that uncomfortable space and holding it for me so that I can express myself. And why is that important for both of us to say? Because ultimately, we're seeing each other. We're hearing each other. We're listening to each other. I see you, you see me. And that's where we build trust. That's where we build respect. That's where we build a deeper relationship.
Because that is so different than I think most of us have ever learned how to have a conversation. If we ever, you know, implicitly learn, we don't. But how do we train ourselves to have a conversation that way?
Well, that's exactly the point. Where do you learn how to have conversations? You don't. You model it. You model it from your family and you model it from your friend group. That's how you model. I mean, so where do we really, that's what I've learned last year, talking about that. What's like, where do we learn how to have quality conversations? Who teaches us? Who teaches us how to ask good quality questions? Who teaches us how to deeply listening? How do we model quality conversations? And that's what's in my book, frankly, 12 Questions for Love. It's an experiential book. Here's 12 questions. Here's why they work. Here's a space to create it. Go have the experience and then practice it. Once a month, go on date night, ask the 12 questions, see what comes up, sit in that space. I mean, how do you learn how to ride a bike? You get on the bike, you pedal, you fall a few times, you keep going. How do we have quality relationships? Well, have quality conversations to begin with. How do we do that? Practice. But then what do we practice? It's in the book. Here's how you ask quality questions. Here's how you hold a space. I can double click on what makes a quality question if you like, but that's like been the aha thing for me this year is like, we don't learn that.
We don't.
Wow. And so I don't think I was a great partner in my 20s and 30s. I'm 49 in 4 months. I think I've gotten a lot better. Why? In the last 10 years? Why? Because I've been watching over 1,250 pairs of all kinds of relationships talking, and I've learned a number of things. But how many of us get that experience?
Right. Not many.
Not many. But now there's a book. Now there's we're talking about it and all that, but we post all these conversations on YouTube so you can see kinds of different relationships. You can see yourself in them, see what you want to be like, what you don't want to be like, So yeah, I think it's a great service that we're able to offer. That's what I've learned.
And so we kind of touched a bit on curiosity and how you can use that to navigate difficult conversations. So, how do you really use curiosity with someone that's not necessarily willing to be just as curious? Can you? Can you have that type of one sided conversation? Or do both people need to be on the same level of interest or commitment to that type of conversation?
Yeah, good question. I don't know.
Mm.
I don't know. I mean, what comes up for me too is if you're in an intimate relationship with someone, are they showing up and doing their best in that moment with you? Okay. If yes, then accept them for who they are.
Mm.
Maybe they don't emotionally articulate the way you do.
Yeah.
Maybe they don't show the same curiosity about the things you're curious about, but they're in that conversation with you in that moment. So acknowledge them, thank them. And then hopefully next week you can do it again. Slowly get up to speed by learning how to ride the bike. And one thing about curiosity that I think is that we're not all curious about the same things. I think we're giving a blanket statement of a word about curiosity. But I think we're curious also about different things, much like we all have different passions about different things.
True.
And just because you don't know what your passion is does not mean you don't have a passion yet. It's just you haven't found it yet. Maybe you haven't looked. Maybe you haven't asked quality questions to help direct you in the right way. But in the same sense, curiosity, like, look, maybe I'm super curious about cooking, and maybe you could care less. Maybe you're super curious about people's stories. Maybe Peter, who's listening now, is super curious about solving problems, right? So we can ask from our different POV, are you asking questions that you're legitimately really curious about? Because that means you don't know the answer and you want to learn. And the other person feels it. They can open up to that. Versus asking, like in the legal world, they say, don't ask a question you don't know an answer to.
Mhm.
So that's why sometimes you don't really like talking to lawyers in that world, because they're just asking you questions they already know the answer to. And they're judging you against it, right?
Yes.
So that doesn't, but ultimately it's okay. Maybe they're curious about different things than I am. Maybe I'm curious of different things than they are. But especially with your intimate relationships, are they sitting in the space with you to explore? Because it's not about the answers. It's about sitting in the discomfort of the questions.
Mm.
That's what makes relationships more fulfilling and more resilient.
We'll be right back after word from our sponsor.
Nearly 9 in 10 registered voters believe the nation faces a mental health crisis, according to a new USA Today Suffolk University poll. Americans are more concerned than ever about their mental health. Mental health first aid provides the resources and training to identify, understand, and respond to signs of mental health and substance use challenges. It provides the confidence and skills needed to offer life-saving assistance, and it provides peace of mind. Our experts provide mental health first aid training for adults, teens, caregivers, veterans, law enforcement, EMS, and school faculty. Mental health concerns are on the rise, but evidence-based training through mental health first aid can make a difference. Visit mentalhealthfirstaid.org to find a course near you, or email hello@mentalhealthfirstaid.org to schedule a training. Courses are available for individuals, groups, organizations, and companies of all sizes. Visit mentalhealthfirstaid.org and make a difference in your community.
Absolutely. I completely agree with that. So
Yeah.
you just touched on emotional articulation.
Yeah.
How does that differ? So how does expressing emotions clearly differ from just understanding them? Like, is there a
I
difference?
think so. I think emotional intelligence is understanding how you're feeling, is understanding how other people are feeling. And you could be highly emotionally intelligent and understand, ooh, that person is feeling that way, that person's feeling this way, and you can react. Emotional articulation is actually putting words to the emotions that you're having or someone else is having.
Mm,
It's just the ability to, some of us are great photographers, some of us are great dancers, some of us are great chefs, some of us are great writers, but not necessarily you all great at all of them. So you might be able to be really good at emotionally intelligent. Hey, that person's pissed and angry and they feel this way, and that dynamic works this way with this other person or with me or this pattern. But to be able to put it into words is a different skill set. And the way you do that is by modeling. You watch other people and you see and you practice. Have you ever noticed when you read a number of books, you start talking like the authors that you're reading?
Yes.
Like there was a time when I read like 5 John Steinbeck books and I started talking like John Steinbeck writes in some way, right? Or you hang out with a new friend group and they're all talking in a certain way in a rhythm, and you do that. Or you go live in France and next thing you know, you're speaking English with a weird rhythm and accent because it's the way that they can understand you best in English, right? We do that. So how do you improve emotional articulation is watch content that is really emotionally articulate. Be with people who are really good at emotionally articulate and just practice and be in that space, because words can never fully describe an emotion. And Wittgenstein said, like the limit of our world is the limit of our language. So you're never going to fully embody the experience, but you can put things, you can make an effort. You can, you can do better than others. You can get it a little bit more colorful, a little bit more expressive than others. And you just do that by practice.
Gotcha. Just that process, just the learning how to become more emotionally articulate takes a level of self-reflection. Got to be able to look at yourself and be able to be open to personal growth, right? So what are some important questions that you should be asking yourself as you get there? You kind of touched on some in the beginning, but I really want to dig deeper into the self-reflection piece.
But to get where? To be more connected with someone else, to have a richer relationship with someone else, with yourself? What are the questions that you'd ask yourself in order to get where?
Well, they might even bring me to a different question. So do you need to be more in touch with yourself to be more in tuned and in touch with someone else? Is that necessary?
That's a great question. And everyone says you have to, right?
Right.
And I think that's true, but I also think I don't get better at dancing myself against the mirror. I mean, I will, but I'll also get good when I'm dancing with someone else.
Yeah.
And I don't think we should hide behind like, I need to be, I was on a podcast where they say, well, the first step of becoming a better leader is self-awareness. Yeah, but I also become self-aware by being a leader. By doing the dance. I can also become more aware of how I relate to other people and how I play in the game of love and intimacy by being in the game of love and intimacy, right? I can also become more self-aware because I'm in the dance with someone else and they're reflecting me to me, reflecting me back to me. So I'm not sure if it's a chicken and egg. I think both things work, but I think, look, I can become more self-aware alone, but I can also become more self-aware in relation to someone else. And matter of fact, it's oftentimes when we are in the dance of love with someone else that we learn faster. So we shouldn't shy away. It's not, a lot of people, we've noticed when we do the over 1,250 conversations, and we did one series with blind dates, and there was a question that came up, which is, why do you think I'm single? Why do you think I'm still single? And it was really interesting. I would say that's when I realized there's like a cultural mantra or a cultural society programming that comes up, because basically everyone answered the same way, which was remarkable. They said, you're taking time to figure yourself out first.
Oh yeah.
Right? That's like the thing. And it's true. But like, isn't there, I mean, man, to figure myself out, there's no better way to figure that out in the dance of love with someone else that I'm intimate with, when I'm vulnerable with, that I see what I'm, if I'm going to go meditate in the cave for 20 years and figure out myself, full self-awareness, it doesn't necessarily mean I'm in a great relationship or good at relationships. I think, who was it? Someone said like, yeah, you could be a Zen master Buddhist, but let me see what you're like in family and Thanksgiving. Right? Let me see how you respond in that space. I think it's both. What I'm saying is I don't think one should hide around the idea that to learn to be self-aware, you have to do it alone. What do you think?
Honestly, as you were talking, I really thought originally you did need to be more in tune with yourself to be able to have any form of a deep conversation with someone else. Like, how can you articulate how you feel if you don't necessarily know? But in my truth moment, in my own therapy journey in couples counseling, been married for 15 years. And in that journey, things about me that I didn't even know about me are coming up. And I'm like, man, I thought I was self-aware, but was I really?
Right. Well, we all have blind spots.
Yeah.
right? Like you're driving a car and there's blind spots in the car. The car, you can't see that part of the car. It's in the blind spot, the rear view. Someone has to reflect back the blind spot. We have blind spots. Who's reflecting it back? How are we playing in that game?
Yeah.
I think you can learn fast. And it's also, I never really tapped into emotions until I went to therapy and they were saying, how are you feeling? So what do you mean? How am I feeling?
Right.
Or like, how you feeling? What? I don't know. Angry? Like, well, you told us here. They pulled out a piece of paper and had like 80 emotions
with
on
the
it.
little-
Like, choose one. Ah, great. So in that case, it was a therapist, but a partner could do that too. Hey, how are you
Yep.
feeling right now? Every time I talk about this, you twist your head. It seems like you're angry. What's going on? Really? I do that? Yeah, you do that. You want to explore that? We are tailor-made reflections for one another. We humans in our relationships are amazing because we could be tailor-made reflections. We can reflect the other person back to themselves, but we can in some sense control that reflection. We can do it in a loving way. We could do that in a hateful way. We could do it in a supportive way, right? Just mental way. How are you choosing to reflect people back to themselves in an effort to have deeper relationships with you?
Yeah, completely agree. And like I said, in my own journey, just feeling like the other person is curious about the questions. It's like, oh, you really want to know that? So I'll tell you more because you really want to know. Okay.
Right? I mean, it's an invitation. When someone is curious, you want to step forward. I mean, I was in a conversation with someone a few weeks ago, and they go, "What do you do?" And as soon as they asked me that, guess what happened to their left foot? Started tapping on the ground. And I knew they don't care. They're just waiting for me to finish so they could tell me what they do. So what I do? I sell questions. What about you? Short answer. And then they talked for 10, 15, 20 minutes. And I calmly was like, cool. Because God knows, I've heard myself talk so many times. I'm not really interested in what I do. Right? I would just do what other people do. So great. If he's not interested, well, no problem. But body language speaks tons, right? So if there's nothing better than someone who's like, watch this, we're on camera, but I'm like, Charlotte, tell me, I want to hear. That
Like,
body
I wanna
language,
tell
you're
you
like,
that.
right? Versus this.
Yeah.
I lean back for those who can't see, arms crossed. Looking around. Curiosity is part of the space creator. It creates a space. It invites people in. And it also is part of constructing a good question because you're offering questions as gifts, not as agendas, not as an attack, but as an offering, as an invitation.
Nice. So if someone wants to be more intentional about creating that space, fostering more curiosity and connection, where should they start?
I mean, I think you should buy the book, 12 Questions for Love. I think you
Absolutely.
can, even before that, you can just go to our YouTube channel and watch any of our conversations. There's I don't know, there's probably 1,000 or 12. Okay, we filmed over 1,250, but we haven't published them all. But they're all up. A lot of them are there. And you can just go in a rabbit hole of
Yes,
conversations.
I know I did the first time I listened. I
Right?
listened for hours and I had to be like, okay, stop. Like, do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's really moving.
Mhm.
You could buy our question deck, which is great because, you just play a game. Yeah, there's a bunch of questions in this box. Let's talk about it. Right? And that's a great way to just be in the space and start playing around. Those are great for me. I think those are great ways to do it. And I think, and if you don't want to do any of that, meaning you don't want to buy any of my products, which totally makes sense because this feels like such a marketing spiel. What would you do? I mean, I would watch the YouTube stuff. You don't have to buy anything there because I think there's stuff there that will inspire you. That, these kind of conversations are possible. Look at how they're looking at one another. Do I do that? Do I look at my partner in the eye before I speak or they speak? Am I really listening? We learn by modeling. I mean, other ways, go spend time with the relationships that you are inspired to be around. Right? Go spend time in that space and say, what are they doing that makes this work? Because oftentimes we delegate relationships working to the word love. Oh, we love each other, so it's going to be good forever. Well, love is also an action. Love is also a practice. And love changes. The emotional love changes. You don't feel, you've been married 15 years, right?
Yep.
I'm sure the love you feel for your partner does not feel the same as on the first date, and on year 5, and on year 15. Mm-mm. It changes. Thank God it changes.
Yeah.
Thank God it changes,
Absolutely.
right?
And
It
I'll even say
deepens.
our anniversary was New Year's Eve, and it's different now than it was 3 months
Exactly.
ago. Yeah.
And there's no, I was talking to a podcaster named Jason Liam. He's got a great little podcast, and he told me that he found out last year he had cancer, and he's doing well. I said, "How's it going?" He said, "Well, I came pretty quickly to terms of dying, like leaving the body, being gone. That I could come to terms with. But what I still haven't come to terms with is the possibility that I won't see my wife or my 2 twin girls again. So it's the relationships that we have the hardest time holding on to.
Yeah.
So if that's the case, how much in our actual living do we actually cultivate the relationships in our life? And ironically, we pay more attention to the ones that are like strangers or new people than the ones that are closest to us. The one closest to us, we actually take for granted. Why? Because we've been with them for so long. I know them so well.
Yeah.
Hold on a sec. You know them so well because you're asking the same questions over and over again. Ask a different question. Honey, what's our favorite lie that we love telling ourselves in our relationship? What is the truth that we hate telling ourselves in the relationship? What's the special thing in you that enables a special thing in me? Different questions. Spend time in that space. There's so much nutrients. There's so much energy in there to fuel your life to make it that much richer. And to me, it's just, I'm so grateful that I've been able to fall into this position where I've witnessed all these conversations and realized this very simple cheat code is like ask better questions in the right space to explore the relationships that are closest to you and most important to you.
So I love a good story. And I know that you have witnessed and released lots of different conversations, but can you share a situation or a conversation where a mutual curiosity led to deeper understanding? And so like, what was the key factor that fostered that openness and appreciation for one another? Can you think of one conversation that you witnessed?
Well, I'll tell you one that I found really interesting. We were filming in New Zealand a few years back, and a slot opened up. Somebody couldn't make it. And the camera woman was there, and she had watched 3 or 4 conversations, and she was, really moved by them. And the slot opened up, and she said, wait, can I invite my ex-husband and my son to have a conversation? I think they'd really, really get a lot out of it. I said, sure. And her son has Asperger's. So he's very honest, very direct. So they sit down opposite each other, and the father is pretty tense because he doesn't know what's going to come up with his son. His son is like direct honesty. I mean, there's no like sugarcoating anything. The son is 16. The dad's probably nearing 40. And I wrote a question, which was the father asking the son, what do you think is the hardest thing being your father? What do you think has been the hardest thing for me being your father? And that moment just created a whole new connection, in my opinion. From my that's my perspective. That's what I saw. Because the son, for the first time, was in his dad's shoes, looking at his relationship to him. And also the father, for the first time, who's, first 16, 17 years of this kid's life, was so focused on his son that he loved so much, right? Helping him socialize and friends and find his way in the world. And this was the first time he asked a question about him, the father. And the son answered it, obviously, honestly. Obviously, he's got Asperger's, super direct and honest. And I think it's one of the first times that the father felt seen by his son. I think it's also the first time the son felt what his dad was going through. And that was one profound lesson for me, and how creating a new question can pivot a relationship because it looks at it from a different point of view. And when that happens, the relationship grows into something else.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that.
Oh, yeah.
So for those interested in learning more about your work, your book, 12 Questions for Love, The Skin Deep, and your video series, The And, where can I find you?
Social media, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, The Skin Deep. TheSkinDeep.com is where we sell all our products. 12 Questions for Love. You can get it on Amazon, ebook, audiobook, anywhere you get your stuff. It's everywhere.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Topaz, I really have appreciated speaking with you today. Thank you so much.
Oh, Sharlee, it's a pleasure. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. Thank you. And thank you to our listeners for taking the time to join us. The resources for this episode and an archive of all of our other episodes can be found on our webpage at triadhq.com/BHT. And we look forward to having you back with us next time on Behavioral Health Today.
We appreciate all the support from our community, and if you like our show, one of the best ways you can support it is by giving us a 5-star rating and leaving a review. Behavioral Health Today is a podcast part of the Triad Behavioral Health Network, all rights reserved.